is on a short list of the greatest centers in the history of football. And I mean the list is short, and he's on it.
In the world of sports commentary, it's not uncommon for analysts to make bold, sometimes controversial statements. Sure, we all have those moments where we make a freezing cold sports take, but some analysts seem to have a knack for perpetually spitting out these outlandish predictions. Colin Cowherd, anyone, whether it's for the sake of grabbing headlines, right or wrong, or because he genuinely believes his out-of-the-box claims offer profound sports insight, it's hard to say. One thing's for sure, though. Cowherd's track record of ridiculous takes has given us a treasure trove of moments that are as hilarious as they are head-scratching. And trust me, I've got a few favorite Cowherd predictions that are downright comical in hindsight. Let's look back to when Colin took to defending Carson Wentz over some of the NFL's most elite quarterbacks. Even his co-hosts couldn't hide their surprise. First, this friggin' guy picks Carson Wentz over Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, you heard that right. Colin confidently argues that Carson Wentz, who has been far from consistent in his career, is better than Aaron Rodgers, who just won the MVP in the same season. Colin would have picked Wentz over him. According to Colin, it's not even a controversial opinion, but rather controversial to choose Rodgers over Wentz. Jesus H. Christ. His logic? Wentz has higher potential and could be the future, while Rodgers is a product of the system. You'd think picking a two-time MVP over a guy who's barely holding on to his starting role would be an easy decision, right? But Colin, he seemed to think it's a no-brainer. The guy who just led his team to the MVP award is apparently the past, and Wentz is the future. It's almost hard to believe anyone would seriously say that, especially in the face of Rodgers' dominance that very season. And then, just when you think Colin can't get any more outlandish, he compares Tom Brady to a sports car. Yes, you heard that correctly. He said Brady was like an SUV, a reliable, old and boring vehicle, while Carson Wentz was the sports car of quarterbacks, flashy, fast, and exciting. Naturally, the lady host calls him out, pointing out that while sports cars may be fast and sleek, they're impractical, expensive to repair, and can't handle all conditions. Colin stubbornly insists, admitting briefly that the sports car analogy was off, but then pivots to comparing Wentz to a Tesla, because, you know, he's the future. To recap, Brady, the guy who just won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, is an SUV, while Wentz, who was struggling with consistency, is the cutting-edge Tesla. Again, let's let that sink in. Sticking to quarterbacks, Colin Cowherd's take on Jalen Hurts in 2021 was downright laughable. The guy straight up said Hurts wasn't a franchise quarterback. His reasoning? Sure, Hurts had the accuracy, but Cowherd was hung up on his mobility, arm strength, and size. He even went as far as comparing Hurts' skill set to a house with a bad foundation. Can't get approved for a house if the foundation's cracked, right? But he wasn't finished. Colin dropped the bombshell that Tim Tebow, yes, Tim Tebow, was his perfect comparison. You know, the guy who had a grand total of 2,422 passing yards in his entire career. A true measuring stick for a franchise quarterback, huh? Cowherd tried to argue. Well, Hurts won a couple of games, but Tim Tebow won 7 straight. Yeah, sure, Colin, because comparing Tebow's legendary career to a young developing QB who's still learning the ropes in the NFL totally makes sense. Absolutely. Fast forward a year, and guess what? Hurts absolutely shuts up Cowherd with a performance for the ages. In 2022, Hurts turned into an NFL MVP runner-up. No big deal, right? And led the Eagles straight back to the Super Bowl for the first time since 2018. Oh, and in that Super Bowl, he threw for 304 yards and a touchdown. But wait, there's more. He rushed for 70 yards and not 1, not 2, but 3 rushing touchdowns, breaking the record for the most rushing yards and touchdowns by a QB in Super Bowl history. You know, no big deal. And just when you think it can't get crazier, Hurts also tied the Super Bowl record for most points scored in a single game, putting up 20 points. Yeah, that's 3 rushing touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. Enough of a statistical show to make Colin wonder if he even knows what a franchise QB looks like. But sure, no foundation, right? Sure, Hurts' Eagles lost a close one, 38-35 to the Chiefs. But let's be real, Hurts' performance was the highlight of the game. Oh, of course, just because Jalen Hurts didn't win MVP or secure a Super Bowl ring in his first few seasons, that clearly means he's definitely not a franchise quarterback, right? I mean, who needs actual evidence? When you've got guys like Colin Cowherd is out here telling us that Hurts isn't worth the title, it's not like Hurts has been absolutely dismantling these weak narratives season after season, making Cowherd's expert opinions look more ridiculous with every passing game. Remember when Colin confidently predicted that the Eagles wouldn't even sniff the Chiefs' red zone? Fast forward to that Super Bowl, and oh look, Hurts and company put up 40 points, just casually on the Chiefs. But sure, let's just ignore that. Then there's Colin's brilliant 2021 assessment that Hurts was definitely not a franchise QB. Well, this season he found himself literally taking a wrecking ball to that narrative. The guy was named Super Bowl MVP after throwing for 221 yards with 2 touchdowns, while also adding 72 rushing yards and another touchdown. But yeah, Colin, don't worry about all that. Just keep pretending Hurts isn't a franchise QB. It's almost like the MVP trophy he earned for that game might be some sort of Sorry Colin award for doubting him. It's less about taking him seriously and more about enjoying the comic relief he provides with each season, that Hurts continues to prove him and others like him wrong. Sticking with the Eagles, Colin Cowherd's track record just keeps getting better and better, or should I say worse and worse. In 2025, before the Super Bowl between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, Cowherd made a bold and frankly ridiculous statement. He didn't believe the Eagles would even make it into the red zone against the Chiefs' defense. Yep, you read that correctly. He said Kansas City's defense was going to completely stymie the Eagles' offense and not even give them a chance to sniff the red zone. Now, we all know how this story ends, but let's recap the absolute disaster that was Cowherd's prediction. Sure, the Chiefs' defense did manage to stop the Eagles on their first drive. Okay, maybe Colin's prediction had a tiny shred of credibility there, but that was it. The Eagles then proceeded to put up 40 points on the very same defense that Cowherd had said wouldn't even allow them to enter the red zone. That's right, a 40-point offensive explosion on a defense that Colin thought would completely shut them down. Yikes! And to make things even worse for Cowherd, the Eagles only punted once the entire game. That's right, once. They didn't even have to break a sweat to score 40 points. The Chiefs' defense, which Colin had praised as a potential roadblock, was gashed by Jalen Hurts and company all night long. The Eagles went on to win 40-22, and Colin Cowherd's bold prediction was left in the dust. Just another example of how his takes on football can be not just wrong, but comically off the mark. While Colin's confidence in his own analysis is only rivaled by Skip Bayless, the actual results speak for themselves. He had massively underestimated the Eagles' offense and the ability of their QB to slice through a defense that everyone else knew was vulnerable. So, as Cowherd continues to make these outlandish claims, we can all sit back and laugh at the results, because at the end of the day, it's easy to talk when you're never held accountable. But when you're wrong on this scale, that's a whole different level of yikes. Colin Cowherd's sports takes are often a source of both entertainment and head-scratching moments. But perhaps one of his most memorable and cringe-worthy predictions came in 2019 when he boldly stated that the Cleveland Browns would surpass the Baltimore Ravens to win the AFC North. Yes, the same Cleveland Browns that at the time were coming off a string of mediocre seasons and had just theoretically been boosted by flashy off-season signings. Cowherd was all in on Baker Mayfield and the revamped Browns, claiming they would finally break out and dethrone the Ravens. The prediction? Well, Let's just say it aged as well as milk left out in the sun. What actually happened? The Ravens, led by an unstoppable Lamar Jackson, finished the regular season with a jaw-dropping 14-2 record, clinching the division with ease. Meanwhile, the Browns, who had been hyped as the next big thing, finished with a dismal 6-10 record, landing third in the division behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. To add insult to injury, the Ravens didn't just win the division, they ran away with it. Now most people would quietly move on and pretend the prediction never happened. But Colin Cowherd, true to form, didn't just let this one slide. He was so disgusted with his own take that he asked his staff to remove the segment from the archives. He even admitted on air that this was, without a doubt, his worst football take ever. Now that's saying something when you've made so many wild predictions over the years. But hey, at least he owned it, right? Not everyone would be willing to admit that they completely misjudged the Browns' chances. Still, it's hard to imagine anyone ever forgetting how confidently he predicted the Browns would surpass the Ravens in 2019. The Browns' 6-10 finish was just another example of how even the most confident sports analysts can miss the mark by a mile. Oh yeah, and then there's one of my absolute favorite Cowherd rants, where he just can't resist throwing in his 2 cents about professional athletes wearing their hats backwards. I mean, seriously, this is where we're at. This guy genuinely thinks that the way someone wears a hat says anything about their ability to lead a team or dominate in their sport. Newsflash, Colin. The fact that a player chooses to wear a hat backwards doesn't magically make them less capable of being a star athlete or leader. If anything, it just shows they know how to have some fun. But sure, let's focus on that. Who cares if they can throw a perfect pass or break tackles like a freight train? If their hat's on backwards, then clearly they're not serious about their game, right? Makes total sense. The fact that this is even a topic of conversation just tells you all you need to know about Cowherd's priorities. He'll happily ignore all the stats, the wins, and the actual leadership qualities, and instead focus on whether someone's rocking a backward cap, as if the hat somehow makes them less of a competitor. I mean, sure, nothing says professional like wearing your hat forward, right? Just like how nothing says professionalism like making awful, unfounded hot takes about things that have literally zero bearing on someone's actual performance. But hey, keep doubling down, Colin. We're all here for it. In the end, Colin Cowherd's sports commentary continues to provide us with endless moments of unintentional comedy, jaw-dropping predictions, and, let's be honest, blatant misjudgments. Whether he's confidently backing players like Carson Wentz over Aaron Rodgers or declaring that the Eagles wouldn't even get near the Chiefs' red zone, his track record of outlandish takes just keeps getting more entertaining with time. It's almost as if Cowherd is in a competition with himself to come up with the most absurd claims, and to his credit, he certainly keeps us on our toes. But while his bold takes may spark conversation, they also highlight one of the most important lessons in sports commentary. Even the most self-assured analysts can get it spectacularly wrong. For those of us watching, though, it's not about taking his opinion seriously. It's about enjoying the show as he repeatedly sets himself up for these hilarious face palms. So here's to Colin Cowherd, the undisputed king of sports, takes that are, more often than not, spectacularly off the mark. Keep them coming, Colin. We're here for the entertainment. So what do you think? Is Colin Cowherd the worst analyst? Let us know what you think in the comments. Now let's skip to the next video. Peace out.